morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us. This is the Right Fit Faster Teacher Recruitment and Hiring for Small Networks and Single Site Schools. My name is Waine Tam. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Selected, and I'm joined here today by Alex Thorson. She's our Director of Community and Content here at Selected. For those who don't know what Selected is, we are a teacher hiring and matching platform. This is all we do. We focus on pre-K through 12 schools throughout the country. Our goal, really our mission as an organization, to improve the access for schools to diverse, qualified, and relevant candidates wherever they are. On the experience on Selected, when you log in, if you create an account, it's totally free. You get to see the curated, a candidate pool that is curated, pre-vetted, and all active job seekers seeking schools wherever you are. So it's a highly tailored and curated experience that a lot of folks like. Okay, so learning outcomes for today. There's three main outcomes. One is to understand the leading trends in teacher recruitment. Two, discover how to play to your strengths as a smaller organization to outperform in recruitment. And finally, three, identify the biases that are holding back your team. Okay, so let's start with leading trends. And these are mainly, unfortunately, headwinds. So compared to the first half of 2020, this is January through June. So compared to the first half of 2020 versus the first half of this year, 2021, the number of active job seeking teachers was down 30% in most urban areas, most major urban areas in that time period. So compared again, first half of 21 versus first half of 2020, it was down almost a third. And so this is across, this is not region specific, this is across all regions. And it's pretty consistent. So what you're seeing is real. It's not just you. It's definitely shared experience with many of our schools that use Selected. Another trending headwind, last summer, actually 2 summers ago, most schools were reporting record retention. This year, heading this summer and this kind of fall, we saw private schools hiring seasons as kind of a canary in a coal mine, extending atypically into the summer. So most private schools, independent schools, are done before school concludes. Lucky for them, right? And into the summer is unusual for them to even be seeking additional hires, but that has extended way into the summer, into the fall. And so that led to our team internally thinking, oh, it can lead to, it's obviously a difficult environment, but that was something that was unusual as we've seen over the past 6 years or so since our organization started. That leads foreshadows a challenging start for charter schools. Many candidates were unable to complete or chose not to complete their exams, licensure requirements, and paperwork during the pandemic. And students graduating from traditional education pathways continue to be misinformed about the charter school experience. This is something that we've spoken about, for years now, really about schools education and the traditional education pathway. A lot of schools don't know their options. And I'm not just speaking specifically about charter schools. It just depends on their specific environment and school institution they're at. They have, we'll talk about this, but they tend to have a few partners, right? And so those partners tend to color the type of experiences that they see or are exposed to. So what we tend to see are students are underinformed or misinformed about what a charter school is, what that experience looks and feels like, how that compares to a district experience, even the recruitment process, and also independent schools. The cycle times are very different. Recruiting times are very different. And so if those students are not made aware of those early on, they may completely miss the independent school cycle, for example. Okay, so why recruitment is uniquely challenging for small organizations. If you're a smaller organization, but really quickly, you have limited staffing or resources. Many schools and organizations are lucky to have a dedicated recruitment team, let alone a dedicated recruitment professional. You may be a school leader doing 5 things, and one of them happens to be recruitment. And this often leads to schools being reactive rather than proactive. Secondly, there's limited school discoverability because you're a small organization, because you may not have a team or budget or just awareness from your region or nationally. It's hard to be found. It's literally hard to be found with larger competing districts, networks, just noise in the space that teachers can't find you. It's time consuming to build partnerships and sustain pipelines. It's just, again, back to limited staff and resources. It just takes time and it's hard to sustain. And then kind of compounding all of this is that turnover among recruitment ranks for those who have a recruitment team, it's pretty high. It tends to be high. In some organizations, it can be higher than the teachers in terms of the turnover. It's challenging. That leads to a loss of institutional knowledge You constantly feel like you're churning, rebuilding every single time. So there are 5 steps to a repeatable recruitment process. We're not going to cover all 5 of these. These would probably be 5 separate presentations, but we're going to cover step 2, 3, and 5. So the first is to ensure team alignment and buy-in. This is really just getting people all on the same page, know the goals of the organization and the ideal candidates, that the candidates and what you're looking for in those candidates, so everyone's aligned and looking for that same kind of those qualities and characteristics. Step 2 is, once you know that, how do you market your school? How do you find these individuals? And how do you leverage, again, your strengths to stand out from the crowd and be discovered? So again, it's a mix of, it's really a lot of proactive outreach, as well as we'll get into asset creation. Step 3 is how to build a pipeline of qualified candidates. Once you're out there marketing, how do you build and sustain that pipeline of qualified candidates? Step 4, how to simplify all these stages. We're not going to cover this in this presentation, but how do you simplify and streamline the process to make it faster, more efficient? And then number 5, how do you stay in touch with recent hires and candidates you didn't hire? How do you maintain that pipeline? Any additional questions, Ronnie? Definitely reach out to us. You have our emails, and anyone else who's still on the call. Appreciate it.